皆さんこんにちは。ニックの教室へようこそ。このチャンネルは英語やギターに興味ある人のために作っています。今回は Let It Go のパート2。パート1には Let It Go のアレンジを見て、トラビス・ピキングについて結構教えました。今回はバースのセクションで、もうちょっと深くトラビス・ピキングのこととか、習いましょう。説明は英語で行いますが、字幕をつけていますので、どんな英語のレベルの方でも大丈夫だと思います。それでは始まりましょう。Okay, here we go. So, now we're going to start doing the verse section. And to me, this is a lot more exciting. There's a lot more interesting stuff that goes on in the verse section. We got more interesting chords. We got more interesting rhythms. It's a little trickier to play, so it feels a little more satisfying when you practice and it all comes out sounding nice. First, I'd like to start by going over the chord shapes that we're going to play. First chord is going to be an E sus4 chord. Sounds like this. So at a glance, you might be tricked into thinking that this is an E minor chord. It looks very similar, but instead of putting middle finger and ring finger on the second frets of the A and the D string, we're going to actually put them on the second fret of the D and the G string. Having this A on the G string is what makes it a sus4 chord. Normally, if you were playing E minor, you'd have that G ring out, which is the third, but we don't play the third. We instead play the A, which is the fourth, which is why it's an E sus4 chord. So first shape is this one here. Kind of a neat sound. Second shape that we're going to play is C major 7 with a fifth string root shape. So if you never played any major seventh chords, then this is going to be a really useful one to pick up. I kind of think after you know power chords, open chords, and then some general triads and bar chords, then the seventh, major seventh, minor seventh, dominant seventh, these are the next most important chords to start learning. To play this shape, we got our pointer finger on the third fret of the A string, this C right here. Put your ring finger down on the fifth fret of the D string. It gives you the basic, punk rock power chord. Middle finger goes down on the fourth fret of the G string. And then your pinky goes down on the fifth fret of the B string. There we go. That's our C major seventh chord. The third chord that we're going to play is going to be a D major chord. And it uses the C shape from the caged system. So if any of you have studied the caged system, this will already be familiar. If not, the way that we come up with it is if you know this open C chord. It's kind of one of the first chords that everybody starts to pick up. You move everything up 2 frets. So this goes up to here. This goes up to here. Those are the easy ones. The parts that aren't quite so intuitive, this open note there, we have to move that one up 2 frets as well. So we go to the first fret, second fret, and then the 1 goes up to the 3 there. For the whole shape now we got pinky on the 5th fret of the A string, ring finger on the 4th fret of the D string, pointer finger now is on the 2nd fret of the G string, and then your middle finger goes on the 3rd fret of the B string. Okay, and then the fourth shape that we're going to look at is going to be another one borrowed from the caged system. This time it's going to be based off of the G chord. So if you look at a G open chord, you have 3, 2, 0, 0, 0. Move those all up 2 frets, you get to right here. And that's going to be our next chord shape. So you got pinky, 5th fret on the low E string. Your ring finger goes on the 4th fret of the A string. And then your pointer finger bars the 2nd fret of all the rest of the strings. But we're only really going to play the D, G, and B notes. So E sus4. C major 7, D major, and then A major. And that's going to make up the meat and potatoes of the verse section of this song. Okay, next let's go over what we're going to do with just our right hand. So muting all the strings over here. First thing to note is that your middle finger is always going to play on the B string. Your pointer finger is always going to play on the G string. The rhythms will change, but those two fingers don't ever have to move. Middle finger always on B, pointer finger always on G. Your thumb is going to bounce around quite a bit like it did in the verse section. So just rhythmically and not worrying about where you're going to put your thumb, we'll play thumb and middle finger on one. On one and, you're going to play your pointer finger. On two, goes just your thumb again. Two and, it's going to be your middle finger. Three is going to be just your thumb. Three and is going to be just your pointer finger. And then four is also going to be just your thumb. Very slowly, what that's going to sound rhythmically is 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Like I said in the intro part, this can be challenging. It's syncopated and can be tough to make your fingers do this. So if it's challenging, you got to slow way down, slow enough so that you can think about each individual movement that every finger makes before you have to make it. And if you can do it like that, then you can slowly start working up the speed, and eventually it'll get to be something that can be musical. Okay, let's start putting notes with it. Our first shape is that E sus4 chord. So like I said before, middle finger always on the B string, your pointer finger is always on the G string. While we do this E sus4 chord, though, your thumb is going to bounce around between the low E here, the open E string, and then second fret on the D string, which is another E. It's just an E up an octave. Okay, on one, we got the low E, two, we got the high E, three, we got the low E, four, we got the high E. So if we put the rest of that with it, the rhythm that we just looked at, and remember your middle finger always on B, pointer finger always on G, and this is the E sus4 shape that we had. Then on one, you got thumb and pointer, or thumb and middle finger. One and you got your pointer finger. Two, you jump up to the higher E. Two and is just middle finger. Three is the low E. Three and is your pointer finger. And then four is the higher E again. Then we go up to the second shape that we played. This is that C major 7 chord. Again, your middle finger stays on the B string, your pointer finger stays on the G string. Now your thumb is going to bounce between the 3rd fret of the A string here and the 5th fret of the D string there. Rhythm stays exactly the same as the first chord, so we got 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Next we're going to jump up to the D chord. Really, now all of your fingers move exactly the same as they did in the last one. Thumb jumps between the 5th fret on the A string and the 4th fret of the D string. Middle finger stays on the B string, pointer finger stays on the G string, and we're using our D shape that we looked at a minute ago. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now we go down to our A chord shape. Thumb is going to jump between the 5th fret of the E string and the 2nd fret of the D string. Once again, middle finger always on the B string, pointer finger always on the G string. Now you got 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay, that makes up the first half of the verse. We repeat all of that twice. Okay, let's try and play it slow. We're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2. And next part's going to be a little bit trickier, but I think if you practice, be patient, go slow, it's doable. You can do it. Okay, let's start by taking a look at the E sus4 chord. Everything up until the 3 count stays exactly the same. So you got 1 and 2 and 3. On 3 and, you're going to put your pinky down on the 3rd fret of the B string and play your pointer finger and middle fingers together. And then on the 4 count, you're going to put your pointer finger down on the 2nd fret of the A string. So you got... Now that right there can be a little more difficult than just the E sus4 chord. You got a lot more, you got fingers fighting over the real estate on your fretboard. Make sure you go slow. You gotta hear all of those notes ring out nice, or else it sounds kind of sloppy. Then you jump up to the C major 7 chord. Now here, thankfully, nothing changes at all. It's exactly the same as the first half of the verse section. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Next, we're going to go up to our D shape, and this is where I think it gets it's the most difficult part of the whole song. You have to do a very large stretch between your ring finger on the 4th fret and your pointer finger on the 1st fret. It'll feel awkward at first, but you can do it with practice. Just go slow. Be patient. So up until the 2 count, everything's the same. You got 1 and 2. On 2 and is where we have to make our big stretch. And we're going to play the 2 and on the B string with your pointer finger on the 1st fret. 1 and 2 and. On 3, your thumb goes back to the 5th fret of the A string, just like normal. 3 and, you're going to play your middle finger again. This is where the rhythm and stuff changes a little bit, but middle finger still always on the B string, pointer finger still always on the G string. 1 and 2 and 3 and, play open B string on and. And now on 4, you're going to play your thumb on the 4th fret of the D string, just like normal. But now for the first part in the whole song, first time in the whole song, we actually play a note on the 4 and count. 4 and, you're going to put your middle finger on the open G string. So it'll sound like that. And that leads us into the next, maybe most challenging thing to do in the song, and it's jump up to this chord here, which is a new shape we're going to use for A. It's actually one of my favorite chords just in all of guitar. I really like the way this sounds. I really like that. So we got... To play that chord, you got your ring finger on the 7th fret of the D string, your pointer finger on the 5th fret of the G string, and then your A string and your B string are both open. So now rhythmically it stays the same as everything else that we've done so far. On 1, middle finger and thumb. On 1 and, just your pointer finger. On 2, just your thumb. 2 and, your middle finger. 3, just your thumb. 3 and, your pointer finger. And then 4 is just your thumb again. This time your thumb is going to jump between the A string, the open A string, and the 7th fret of the D string. Okay, now transitioning between those two shapes and letting everything ring out can be really tough. So when I was learning how to play this, I just jumped back and forth between those two patterns over and over again. It helps practice with the stretch, and it helps practice with switching those chord shapes. So you can hear it even there. If I'm not totally focused and zeroed in on what this left hand is doing, it can kind of choke out some of the notes, get a little iffy sounding. Next, we jump back down to our E sus4 chord, and it's going to be the same. E sus4 and the C is going to be the same as this second half of the verse section. So we got. And now you just jump down to the first A chord that we played. The rhythm's going to change a little bit, but it shouldn't feel too bad. If you can get everything up to this point, it should come out pretty naturally. So we got 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. We're going to run through this whole thing really slowly, the whole verse. So we're going to go 2 times through with the normal chord shapes, and then do the second half where we had all our different rhythms and shapes and everything. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay, here we go. This is where the rhythms and stuff change. And then big stretch coming up. And then straight to the A. There we go. How'd you do? Ready to try that up to speed? On the new rhythms. Shit. The whole thing, full speed. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we get the new rhythms and the big stretch. And straight to the A. There you have it. That's going to wrap up the first verse to my arrangement for Let It Go. どうでしょうか？英語を聞き取りました？ちょっとギターのところ今回難しかったですけど、まあ頑張りましょうね。ここまで聞いていただいてありがとうございます。エリット中ニックです。これから、今回のレッスンに出てきた英語単語を発音します。Intuitive, intuitive, meat and potatoes, meat and potatoes, syncopated, syncopated, real estate, real estate, zeroed in, zeroed in, choked out, choked out, iffy, iffy. はい、ちょっとね、本当の単語になるんですけど、まあ半分以上はスラングのことですね。それにも興味ある人は結構いると思うんですが、まあどうでしょうか。コメントで教えてください。はい、以上です。今度はパート3で、プリコーラスとコーラスのセクションと、バース2のところを習います。このチャンネルを登録したら、アップするとすぐ見えるようですね。まあよければお願いいたします。それでは終わりにしたいと思います。せーの、さようなら。